Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm Bruce McCurdy with the Edmonton Journal's Cult of Hockey. I'm here tonight with Ira Cooper, original Posar, who has bailed us out a bit tonight by doing the game grades as a guest grader, and he's also a guest podcaster. So thank you twice over, Ira, and welcome to the podcast.
My pleasure. Happy to help, and thanks for having me.
So tonight we had a tight game at I was going to say Rexall Place, Rogers Place in Edmonton. I was down at the game myself and took it in person in 3 dimensions. Always enjoyable to see a live game, especially a tense one with a happy ending like tonight's turned out to be. A 2-1 Edmonton, officially 2-1 win for Edmonton, and what I consider a 1-1 tie with Edmonton winning the skills competition at the end, but we'll take the 2 points.
Sure will.
And it was a uphill battle tonight with the Jets controlling at least the shot clock to the tune of 47-32 officially, and especially with Edmonton having to kill a double minor that stretched through the first 3+ minutes of overtime, meaning a 4-on-3 power play for Winnipeg that just seemed to last for an eternity. And with Connor McDavid, of all people, in the penalty box for a double minor for high sticking in the last minute of regulation. But somehow the Oilers survived all that, and they got to the final buzzer, and then got the job done in the shootout. So that's 3 for 3 now in gimmick time. One game, one in 3-on-3 overtime, the other 2 in shootouts. So 3 times Edmonton has stretched beyond 60 minutes. And so they've at least taken advantage of their opportunities in those 3-point games. So again, we'll take the 2 points. Right. Anyway, Ira, let's start with you as our guest to go first with, we're going to do 2 good things each, of course, because the Oilers won this game. And later we'll do 1 bad thing and 1 number apiece. And so what is your first good thing from this game?
My first good thing, I think I'm going to go with just the general way that the Oilers started this game and played throughout this game. A couple of the biggest criticisms that we hear, or at least I hear, basically night in, night out, is 2 things. They need to start better, and they can't win these types of games in the playoffs. Well, at least to my eye, while the shot clock, as you said, Bruce, wasn't in their favor in the first period, I don't think it was representative of the play. I thought the Oilers were engaged from the very first shift. They had their legs. They were hitting. They were aggressive on the forecheck. They were hard on the puck in battles. They had lots of high danger chances. They missed the net on a bunch. It was just the entire game was kind of back and forth. I would say it was a fairly evenly played game. Both teams were physical. Both teams had lots of chances. Both teams got great goaltending. Both teams battled. Both teams missed glorious chances. But just for them to start out that way, not give up a goal early in the first 10 minutes, so they weren't chasing the game. And in fact, I thought that, notwithstanding the shots, that they, were the better team for significant portions of the 5-on-5, far from dominating, but they're playing a good team. And it was essentially a 1-1 game going into overtime. That's where both teams got great saves from their goalies, and made great plays, great defensive plays, sticks and plays, blocking shots. It was one of those playoff style games that they're gonna have to learn how to play and how to win, and to do it with. Well, I'm not sure if we're going to call him the 3rd string goalie anymore, but he came into the season being the 4th string, I guess, if we want to count Stalock. But I'm sure we'll be talking about him quite a bit. But to do that with their, I guess, backup goalie for now is just another great arrow up for the team.
Yeah, it was a solid. I didn't get the sense there was many times in this game where there was a significant lapse by the Oilers. There's a couple of stretches where they had trouble getting the puck out of their own zone, but I didn't think there was like letdowns by the team where they kind of went away for a few minutes like we've seen in other games. And they hung around and they hung around, and they certainly did get some, they got some stops, but Winnipeg got some stops too. I was sitting behind Hellebuck's net in the first and third period, and that guy's tremendous.
Oh, yeah.
There was a lot of shots like right on the corners where Edmonton did get a chance, and they put a shot just inside the post, and Hellebuck, it was like he knew where it was going to go before the shot ever left the stick, and it looked like there was a hole there, and by the time the puck was shot, there'd be a glove or a pad in place waiting for it, and he made it look easy, but it isn't easy to do that. The goalie that can anticipate like that, I mean, that's a tremendous attribute for a netminder, and I came away with a sort of additional respect for Connor Hellebuck tonight than I already had, which was plenty.
Yeah, and I think he was in the Oilers' heads a little bit at the end. Just between Puljujarvi and Nuge, they must have had 10 good looks at the net from the high slot or just off the slot, and Hellebuck probably made 5-6 saves, and they missed the net a few times. I think eventually they were trying to pick corners and stuff. So I know the way the Cult counts scoring chances, and I guess it's high danger shots now. Some of those that won't count, but they certainly had their opportunities at them.
Right on. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing when David Staples has the first run of the scoring chances, and then I do the review of them, and be interested to see how big a margin, if any, that the Jets have there. But on the shot clock, they certainly did. Which brings us to my first good thing, which has to be the net minding of young Stuart Skinner between the pipes for Edmonton, given this big opportunity, first game home after a road trip, in which he played 7 of the 15 periods on the road and comported himself quite well. He lost both of his starts, essentially 3-2 in each case, without a lot of either goal support or defensive support in either game, I thought. And I didn't think he was the problem in either of those losses. And on Tuesday, in the 5-2 loss, Mikko Koskinen was part of the problem with a really bad goal to start the game. And Skinner came in the third period and held the Oilers in there with some good stops, and was a good choice. In the end, I was a little surprised. I thought they'd go back to the veteran. I thought Tippett would do I got to give my veteran a chance to bounce back, and but he didn't. He went to Skinner, and Skinner rewarded him and us with a terrific performance. Lots of very solid saves. He looked strong in the net. I like he wasn't fighting the puck at all. His rebound control was mostly good, and when he did have a rebound where he didn't have much chance to control the rebound, he came up with a save on the rebound. There was 2 in particular, one on a Jets short-handed rush in the dying seconds of the first period, when they broke away and 2 of their players had a dangerous look right in a row, and Skinner was able to keep both out. And then there was one in the third period when it was still 0-0 early in the third, and that time he stopped a hard drive from Kyle Connor, and on the rebound, Nick Ehlers. So 2 of Winnipeg's top snipers in a row. And on the night, Ehlers did get the goal on 6 shots, and Kyle Connor, who has 12 goals on the season, had 9 shots on Skinner, unless we forget one more in the shootout. Exactly. And he was able to turn all 10 of Connor's shots aside. So it wasn't like he was getting, bombarded with point shots by Logan Stanley. He was facing some quality rubbers, from some guys that really know how to shoot the puck. He was beaten only by Ehlers on the same damn shot that Ehlers scored in overtime in Winnipeg in Game 3 against Mike Smith.
I would say
scored again Tuesday night against Koskinen. top of the left face-off circle. You think, well, the goalie should get that one. He wires it right under the bar. And tonight, I wasn't sure. Did Nuge maybe tip the shot right at the source, or his stick was there, but even on the big screen, I couldn't tell.
His stick was there, but I think it went straight in, and it was, you're absolutely right. Like, he was brilliant. He was spectacular. I'd say Ben Scrivens, like, from the one famous Scrivens shutout game, with the difference being that Skinner's younger and bigger and improving, and with some pedigree that we might be able to expect these types of things again. But on the goal, it was an absolute snipe by a sniper off the bar and in. Yeah, there's no chance. Well, there's always a chance, but there's zero fault of the goalie on that one, and it was so demoralizing. But it set up something kind of spectacular after that. But what a performance at home. Like, it's his second win, and it's the second win at home. But wasn't quite the same as what was it, 6-5 against 7-5 against Ottawa,
8-5 against Ottawa last year, and no fans, so it's not the same at all.
No fans, and
it's his first real game in Edmonton with fans.
And of course, in that other game against Ottawa, he was, I don't want to say part of the problem, but he was part of the solution tonight. In fact, he was the solution. He went save for save with arguably the best goalie in the league, who was having a great game, and he was better. He was one save better. It happened to be in the shootout.
He was 15 saves better, if you want to look at it one way. But yeah, he held his own, and he wound up being the first star, and Connor Hellebuyck wound up being second star. So that's a nice way to get it done, Stuart Skinner. It kind of reminded me a little tiny bit. I also happened to go to this game a few years ago now, Laurent Brossois' NHL debut in 2015. Was it when Todd Nelson was coach? Was it when Dallas Aikens was still coach? And they were playing San Jose, and they got outshot like 52-20 something. And Brossois had a 1-0 lead with like 10 minutes to go in the third period and couldn't quite hold it and wound up getting beat. Well, I think it was 3-1 with an empty netter in the end, but it was, it was the goalie against the world. Well, this wasn't that. I mean, he had more support in terms of defensive support and such tonight, but he had to do a fair amount of the work on his own. And hats off to you, Stuart Skinner. You came up with a huge performance, and you answered more questions than you raised new ones in terms of, if Mike Smith is going to need some time to get healthy, the Oilers suddenly, I think, just based on Skinner's performance in this last week, that the Oilers can say, well, we don't have to rush Mike Smith back because we don't want to kill Koskinen and we don't trust Skinner. I think they're now at the point where they can say, well, maybe we do trust Skinner, and we're going to give him some more games until he gives us reason to not trust him. And so he bought himself a fair bit of rope tonight, I would think.
I think
good on him. I mean, in a perfect world, he emerges as the guy, right? I mean, that would be fantastic. And, you don't want to extrapolate from one good game, but you have to say that was a very promising game. Uh-oh. Ira, are you there? What happened? I have a frozen Ira on my screen. So let's carry on with, I'm going to go straight to my second good thing and hope that he returns. And we're back. Had a loss of signal there. So we're going to have to splice this podcast together. And by we, I mean the royal we, David Staples. Have fun with that. But we're just going to pick up where we left off and go on to our second good thing. Ira, what was your?
There's a few. I had a few to choose from, but I think I'm going to go with the penalty kill, which has been a plus for the team all year long from the very beginning, in particular on the road. But but this performance was at home. I think they came into the game 5th on PK, and they are now up to 2nd in the NHL on the PK, to go along with, of course, the first ranked power play in the league. But tonight there was no goals. I think they only had 2 power plays. They didn't score, but they were shorthanded 5 times, and the PK was actually going to be one of my good things tonight, before they even had to kill that 4-minute penalty near the end. So they were shorthanded 3 times from them, twice on back-to-back penalties from Tyler Benson. And on those 2 PKs, they gave up a grand total of 0 shots against. I think they gave up a couple on the first one, but they weren't dangerous generally, and they did a great job of cutting off the crossing pass, which is the most dangerous, and generally just battled and were able to get multiple clears on every kill. And in fact, in particular on the 2 back-to-back Benson penalties, where the Jets got 0 shots. The Oilers, although I'm not sure they ended up with any shots on net on them, they did have a couple quick break strikes. Nuge and Dry had a 2-on-1 on one of them, and I think Hyman, can't remember exactly what happened on the other one, but they had a couple chances against the Jet net. So the PK was a material part of the game, and then of course the stick penalty on McDavid with 46 seconds to go, and I'm still not sure it needed to be 4 minutes. It was definitely a penalty, but I didn't see any blood, and there was definitely no malice. It was a hard it was a hard hit to the face with the stick. So, but anyways, I digress on that. But at that point, I think pretty much all Oilers fans are thinking, let's just kill this 46 seconds and get the point. It's going to be almost impossible to kill 3+ minutes of 4-on-3 with the likes of Ehlers and Connors and Scheifele moving the puck around. But they did. I don't know what Dry was doing out there. It seemed like he was just standing there at the top of the triangle, but he played about half of it and made a number of plays, a diving play to get 1 puck out, and even tried to start a shorthanded rush on the 3-on-4. So kudos to the PK, now sitting 2nd in the NHL, and full marks for the 5-for-5 tonight.
Yeah, well, full marks, the top penalty killer. Again, Stuart Skinner, 10 saves. Shots on net in overtime were 8-1, and I'm pretty sure that almost all those shots came in that 4-on-3. And I'm also pretty sure they had a couple of shots in those 45 seconds or so that were left in the 3rd period. So that 4 minutes of power play, they had probably 8 or 9 of those 10 shots. And Skinner stood tall, but the defense didn't give anything from directly in front. They were all shots from the circles or from a little higher out there. And what slightly frustrated me in the overtime was inability to clear the zone. And Edmonton they were a little aggressive, and I think the thinking was we're probably not going to be able to kill off the entire 3 minutes, but Jets have got 4 forwards on the ice. If we can catch them out, maybe we can score and win that way. And they got aggressive, but sometimes they got a little too aggressive and didn't get the puck out of their own zone before trying to counterattack.
Darnell Nurse made the most frustratingly bad play of the game, I think, is one of the ones you were talking about, where they were in their zone for a good minute and a half. They were gassed, and he had the puck with time and space, and he tried to go on a rush, and I don't know if he bobbled it or what, but then it stayed back in. I was like, there's a time and a place, Darnell.
Yeah, he was about 5 feet inside his own blue line with an easy clearance, and he tried to do too much with it. Anyway, there was a couple of those, but like I say, there was no sort of critical blunders where they left a guy all alone for a tap in or whatever, and they managed to keep him to the outside. Winnipeg might be kicking themselves a little bit for not doing more with it, but Hey, memo to Winnipeg. Too bad. You had
Exactly.
your way with us
And
for
this
long
is
enough.
not, yeah. And let's not forget that this is a good power play Winnipeg has. I think they were ninth in the league
Oh,
coming into the game, and they
those are
even
good.
got, yeah.
And look at those guys they got out there. So, well, good on the power play or the penalty kill. And you're right, it's been good for much of the year, despite major personnel changes. And one change tonight I noticed was instead of Cece with Keith and Bouchard with Nurse, they flipped them. And they had Cece playing
Mhm.
with Nurse and Bouchard with Keith. I don't know what the rationale was there, but it worked.
I think it may be a bit of a function of them being down to 5D and just who had recently been on the ice before that time. But that's just my speculation on that.
And
And
the
maybe
forward who played the most was Draisaitl, 4 minutes and 54 seconds out of the 10 minutes, and he had a little extra FOGO duty during the game due to the absence of Derek Ryan, one of their face-off men. So there's several times on the PK where Leon just came out, took the face-off, and won it, or lost it and had to defend for a bit. But as soon as the Oilers got the puck down the ice, he would head straight for the bench as opposed to staying around for his usual minute-long shift. He had a few of the sort of 10-second Manny Malhotra style shifts. He was the initial FOGO expert, as analytics people call him. Face off, get off, FOGO.
Mhm, mhm.
And Leon did that a few times. He had 30 shifts in this game. Leon played just under 26 minutes and did a little bit of everything in that game except score a goal. So my
I think
second
one
good,
of my game grades, I think I gave him an 8 and said something along the lines of one of the best games you'll see from a player that didn't produce a point. He was an absolute beast at both ends of the ice tonight, Leon.
yeah. Well, my second good thing, I got to go to the guy who did score a goal, Connor McDavid. Not just that he scored, but the way he scored and when he scored, which was late in the third period, another crucial goal by him on a great individual effort, and sort of 5 minutes to go in the third. And this is a movie we've seen several times before. I remember seeing him beat Calgary, beat Montreal, tie New York Rangers on goals that sort of in the late going of the third period. And this was another one where after 54 minutes of 0-0 hockey, Winnipeg broke the tie with just 6 minutes left. Seventh game in a row, Oilers gave up the first goal, but I mean, it was so deep into the game, it wasn't like an early letdown or anything. But with only 6 minutes to go and Hellebuyck in the net, you're sort of going, oh, 1-0
Yep.
to go. And it didn't take 30 seconds, and the game was tied up again 1-1 after another brilliant, dazzling, spectacular rush by number 97, where he didn't quite go through four guys like he did with the Rangers, but he went through two or
Just three.
three guys along the way.
Just three.
And he had the puck going left, right, left, and then up into the top right corner, uh, just a dazzling play. And it seemed like he at one point he was just going to run out of room, and all of a sudden he was out the other side with the puck and immediately whipped it upstairs. And that was one of those goals where it was like a giant magnet pulled all of the fans up and out of our seats as puck went into the net. I mean, that's hockey at its finest. And
He
so,
didn't give the team a chance to sag 28 seconds after the Ellers
yeah,
goal that must have just taken the entire air out of the arena. He's like, no, no,
mhm.
no, no. This is going to be one of those nights, and he does that. And I think there actually was a fourth jet that he beat, but it was just a little farther back in the neutral zone. He beat one, and then there was the cluster of three, and one of them being Logan Stanley. So he's
Oh,
about
good.
7 foot tall. So
Yeah. Well, Oilers needed to light up Mr. Stanley one way or another. Cassian tried early in the game, and McDavid succeeded late in the game. Then, if it was Stanley that he went around. it was all from the stands, kind of a blur, right, as to in terms of who was doing what for Winnipeg. All I knew was that it was McDavid putting on another magic show. Now you see it. Now you don't. Oh, look, I have it over here now. And into the net. And on a night where goals were almost impossible to come by, to get one back so quick when it was so desperately needed. Hats off to you, Mr. McDavid, and for the cherry on top, a brilliant snipe in the shootout as well.
It was almost identical to the last home game against the Rangers, where that one the Oilers had battled back to tie it up, if I remember correctly, and then the Rangers scored late, and then McDavid's like, well, no, I'm gonna go tie this game up again. So with a brilliant goal. So he's having quite the month of November as far as highlights are going. I say Leon's probably still leading player of the month categories, but Connor might be leading the highlights of the night category.
Yeah, well, 16-game point streak for him now in the current season, and I think he had 6 or 7 in a row at the end of last season too, if you like to splice them together. And of course, you have to avoid the playoffs to do that, because the Oilers got shut out in one of those games.
Yeah. What was it? What you would know, Wayne? Was it 52?
51.
51.
Yeah, 1983-84. First 51 games. He did it the first 30 games of the previous year, and then he did 51 games the following year. So let's move on to bad things. And again, Ira, you lead the way.
There's a couple that I'm choosing through in my head, and I am unfortunately gonna single out one player, and I hate to do this, but I think I need to. It's Duncan Keith. And the reason that I've decided to single him out, because there's a few negative things as there are in most games, is because not only did he have a poor game, but it's been kind of a trend a little bit. I thought he started off the season fairly well, and then was quite good, and the second pairing was quite good for a stretch of games. But for the better part of the road trip and now back home, I'm finding that Duncan Keith is. I'm not sure exactly what it is. He's just making some like unintelligent plays with the puck, which doesn't sound like him. Maybe it's the amount of minutes that he's playing, catching up with him, which definitely could have been a factor tonight, because they had to go down to 5D, including losing a left shot D quite early. I think he played something like 26 minutes, but I also found him to be lacking early in the game. There was, he was set up brilliantly for a shot from the high slot, and he bungled it and missed the net. And then the puck went back in the Oilers zone, and he had it with plenty of time and an easy outlet pass, and he missed it for an icing. There's a couple plays in the defensive zone where he had some time and space, and just where he put the puck was to nobody, or to a 50-50 battle when there was better places. It's more mental, I think, than anything. And he made one really bad decision at the offensive blue line, which led to I think it was Connor and Ehlers again coming back the other way. And those. He's making the Tyson Berry mistake at the offensive blue line quite a bit, where he's pinching or standing up and just not getting the puck, not getting the player, or not getting it deep. And it's just becoming a bit of a trend. And then I am not one of those people that just are going to attach the acquisition cost and cap hit. I try to evaluate him based on his play, and I'm really cheering for him, because I find that most Oilers fans, I shouldn't say most Oilers fans, there's a group that seem to be cheering against him for various reasons. They just can't take away the fact that he's $5.5 million on the cap, et cetera. But for
that's on the GM.
Exactly, that's on the GM. So based on his play, I thought on aggregate on the season, he was actually better than I expected, but he seems to be struggling quite a bit the last couple weeks. I'm not sure if it's aggregate minutes, or if he's banged up, or if he's 38 years old and it's just how it's going to be now. But with the third pairing kind of banged up and not good enough, and Nurse can only do so much, it's a bit concerning. So he did play 26 minutes tonight. And he did get an assist
Oh.
on those. He got the secondary on the McDavid goal. It was just a quick little pass to CC. CC made a nice up to McDavid, but that's one of those. It's one of those gimme assists. But anyways, so I'm gonna have to go with Duncan Keith, and I'm hoping that the next time I come on this podcast, he's one of my good things because I'm cheering for him.
Right on. Yeah, well, you look at his line, and he's an assist +1 and 26:49 ice time, no shots, 3 giveaways kind of stand out, and he was all of that. There were some questionable distributions of the puck, as you've already mentioned, so we won't dwell on it, other than I will add that I thought his partner, Cody Ceci, had a very strong game. And between the two of them, the partnership survived, but I thought Ceci was the stronger of the two in this game.
I thought Ceci played one of his better games of the year. I think he had 6 hits too.
Yes, 4 shots, 6 hits. Both led the defense, and he was noticeable in a good way for the most part. And he also played 5:41 on the penalty kill. He got the lion's share of the penalty killing duty. Ceci, playing with Nurse, of course. So, yeah. My bad thing. I had something in mind that's gone away, but I'm going to single in on the unfortunate. I'll call it a shift by Tyler Benson. The shift being the time between he left the bench to go on the ice to the time he finally got back to the bench, which was like 5 minutes later. And his first shift ended with a penalty 200 feet from his own net for slashing, where he chopped, I think it was Dylan DeMello, on the back of the leg. And I'm not sure, did he use a scythe? Did he have an actual scythe for that? It looked like DeMello might have to get amputated the way he went down.
I think Louis on the broadcast actually was wondering if he was going to be okay.
So he goes off to the box, and you're thinking, this poor rookie, he's probably, in a 0-0 game, he's probably just sitting there, just with his eyes closed, just willing those 2 minutes to pass without a goal being scored. And it does. The penalty kill does a great job, kills it off. Benson comes out of the box just as the puck's coming up the ice. He joins the play. He stays out there. He goes into the corner, and he takes another penalty 200 feet from his own net, a second time right in a row. And for cross-checking Neil Pionk, which either he cross-checked Pionk or a sniper fired a shot from the 40th row and hit Pionk, because he collapsed down as if he'd punctured a lung or something. And I got to give it to Neil Pionk. He kind of reminds me, and this is hard words coming from me. He reminds me of another Neil Sheehy, that used to play for Calgary Flames, a player I absolutely detested, because he'd be laying on the lumber and doing the greasy stuff all night long. And you touch the guy, and he was very convincing in terms of, I've been like seriously fouled here, and the ref, went for it. And poor Tyler Benson went straight back to the penalty box. And I can only imagine the look that he might have been getting from Coach Dave Tippett around that time, late in the second period, 0-0 tie. Now we got to kill another penalty 200 feet from our net. So whether he was, suckered into it by a couple of smart veterans of Winnipeg Jets, or whether they were stupid penalties, well, I'll let the listener decide. But they, score sheet says they were penalties, and to take 2 of them in a row like that in a 0-0 game, I thought Benson might not ever see the ice again, but I did see him at least once in the third period that they threw the fourth line out there.
I was just going to say, I give a bit of kudos to Tippett. I think he got 2 shifts in the third period, so that his time on ice it was up to 425, so slightly more than his penalty minutes.
He spent a little more time on the ice than he did in the box.
He did have 2 hits in those in those 4 minutes and 25 seconds. And you know what, like, and I was contemplating going along the same lines for one of my bad things as well. And like they were both very marginal calls. Let's be clear. The first one, it was a love tap but the Oilers had come off a recent power play, and you know what he did? He gave the ref an opportunity to make a call. The second one, Pionk sold it. It was a cross check, but you know it didn't have to be called. But again, the ref was given the opportunity to make the call, and both in the offensive zone, like that's the coach wants the fourth liners to make an impact, do something, get noticed, right. Do something to earn your ice time. Well, I don't think this is what he was getting at, but I haven't had a chance to listen to the post game, but I did see some quotes, and Tippett wasn't overly happy with it, but he's did acknowledge that he's trying to be aggressive. That's what he wanted to. It's what we need Benson to do in his current role on this team. So I don't think he's gonna be picked up on waivers by the Kraken.
He's not going to be on the waiver wire at noon tomorrow.
I don't think so.
Right. Well, that's all well and good, but Leon Draisaitl gave the refs a chance in overtime to call a penalty after they'd called McDavid for 4 minutes when he kind of got tackled along the boards trying to break away in overtime. And there was significant booing going on in the fans when that even-up call was not made. But
and even up in overtime, in day and age, come on, Bruce.
Well, it was 3-on-4 though, and that's the kind where they're more apt to call it to even it up, but they didn't. So in the end, it was 2 penalties, 2 power plays, 4 or 5 against. Mm-hmm. So a significant disadvantage on the night, with one of the same refs, Graham Skilleter, that ref the game in Winnipeg the other night. So let's move on to numbers.
Sure. My number is going to be 39, which is the overall number of hits the Oilers were credited for tonight. And I know I've mentioned hits probably 3, 4, 5 times on this podcast. I'm not one of those guys that thinks that that they have to out-hit the other team and that's the style of play. But, stemming off of last game where the Jets just physically dominated the Oilers, sometimes legal, sometimes not. But it was a physical domination through the game. And aside from McDavid and Leon themselves, the Oilers had almost no pushback. I think they had 5 hits from the forwards last game. Tonight they had
3 of them were by Yamamoto.
Exactly.
The smallest player.
Tonight they had 22 hits by the forwards and 39 overall. So they out-hit the Jets 39-17.
That's a huge margin after Winnipeg had a 25-14 margin the night before. And I wrote about this in my game day today. And I'm with, hits aren't the be-all, end-all, but they are an indicator.
Yep.
And they're not perfectly counted, but they are counted.
Oh, they're
over the long haul, they give impressions about how players play. Not necessarily say good or bad, just describes player's style. And to me, it's bad if you have too many of them, and it's more bad if you don't have enough of them. But ideally, you want to finish your checks and you want to take your pound of flesh once in a while when you can do so in a clean fashion. From 39 to 17. I didn't see 39 hits in that game from him.
It could be some.
I think maybe the pressure was on, and maybe there was. Well, let's make sure that every contact that we see, we count in this game. Take a little heat off these boys, but
I think it was a heck of more than 14. That's for sure. And sometimes
way more. They were way more engaged in this game than last game, which is the major point. The exact number notwithstanding.
That's exactly what I was going to get at. There's the theory, and it's not necessarily wrong that if you have more hits, it probably means you don't have the puck enough, and there's a bit of truth to that. But that wasn't the game tonight. The number was thrown out there just to show the level of engagement. The Oilers are definitely, they weren't dominating, but they weren't chasing the puck all night long. They had the puck. In fact, I believe near the end of the game when they Sportsnet did the offensive zone time stat. It was almost identical at about 10.5 minutes each. So it was just to show the level of engagement that they had tonight as compared to the game on, what was it, Tuesday night.
Right on. Yeah, no, much better. 6 hits from Warren Fogle, who was skating around and trying to at least finish his checks, and had a couple of good ones. And the third and fourth lines didn't generate anything really offensively, but at least they brought the lunch pails and looked after that aspect. So for my numbers, I'm just going to go with the 3 left defensemen ice time. We have a huge range here. 31 minutes, 21 seconds for Darnell Nurse on 31 shifts. 26 minutes, 49 seconds for Duncan Keith on 30 shifts. And then all the way down to 3 minutes and 29 seconds on 6 shifts for Slater Kukuk, who got banged up early in the game and tried to come back and play a little bit, but couldn't hack it, and wound up retiring about 6 minutes into the second period for the rest of the night. And a 65-minute game, when you lose a defenseman relatively early in the first period, that puts a tremendous load on the other guys. And really, it was the other 2 lefties. It wasn't like they moved a righty and they did some righty-righty pairs and they went, rotated 5 guys around. It was basically Nurse or Keith on the ice the whole rest of the way. But what that does do potentially, Ira, is open up, because there's no word yet on Kukuk's lower body. Looked like it could be an ankle, and it could be a high ankle sprain, which, those tend to take weeks as opposed to days. For now, they're calling him day to day, but it might open up a spot on the roster if he can't go. And I'm interested in your opinion on this, because you watch Bakersfield Condors quite a lot.
I do.
Who do you think of the 3 fairly qualified left defensemen that they have there? Who might be at the top of the pecking order for recall?
Are you including William Lagesson in those 3?
Well, actually, yeah, there's 4. When you talk, I'm actually not including Lagesson. I think he's played his way out of the equation this year. He's the guy who played, 20 NHL games last year. That, he's a left shot defenseman as well. So, let's include him, Lagesson, Broberry, Samarukov, and Niemann. So 4 European defensemen, all left shot defensemen down there in Baco. Who would you call?
Yeah. Well, Lagesson, it's odd. He's been such a dominant player at the AHL level. He has been poor this year. He's getting beat wide. He's giving the puck away. He's not the two-way defenseman. I still think that because they have a history with him, that he could be the call, but he would be number 4 based on merit from what I've seen. Okay. Philip Broberg is the name that comes to most people's minds, and he has been absolutely brilliant the last, I'd say, 3 weeks. He struggled to start off with getting used to it, but he's playing 23, 24 minutes a night. He's running the power play. He's leading the defensemen in assists in the AHL, mostly on the power play. But he's skating miles. But I don't think he's going to be the call. I've heard the exact same words between Jay Woodcroft and Ken Holland, I think 7 times now, which is he's right where he needs to be. They keep saying those exact words. It's like they're making a conscious effort to say, hey, Oilers fans, we're not calling, he's staying here for who knows how long, but he's not getting called up in the foreseeable future. Dimitri Samarukov and Marcus Niemann are the other 2 names, and Samarukov is the guy that has the skill set that's actually just perfect for 3LD. He's big, aggressive. He defends the zone entry very aggressively. He's hard in front of the net. He's mean. He hits hard, but he's still wearing a full face cage down there from that broken jaw. He missed half of last season and then all of camp. So, and frankly, he's just been good. Like, he just does what he does. He clears the zone. He gets the puck out. Marcus Niemann, who a year ago you wouldn't have even have considered him being a real prospect. But he's got the wingspan of a condor. He's
Yep.
tall. He's lanky. He just gets in the way of pucks. He gets in the way of players. He doesn't have very good hands, but he moves the puck up. And I almost kind of think that he's the guy because they don't want to call Broberg up. Samarukov still, just not 100% healthy probably, and Laguson's just not being very good. But Niemann, if his hands and his puck skills can do enough at the NHL level, he has a knack of closing the gap, taking the body, getting in the way, and he almost reminds me of like a young Chara. He's just kind of, before Chara, kind of, let's not get crazy here, but before Chara kind of got his coordination and became the Hall of Famer, where he's kind of gangly, uncoordinated a little bit, but he's getting in the way and he's making plays and he's got a good stick. So I would love to see Niemann get a game at 3 LD. I have a feeling that they'll call up Lagesson just because Sammy's not ready and they don't want to call up Broberg, and I'm not sure they trust Niemann. But to me, he's played well for the entire shortened season last year, and he's continued this year.
He's kind of thickened up a little bit too. Like my first impressions of Niemann was he was made out of pipe cleaners. He was like complete string bean, and now it looks like he's added a little bit of. Like he's not huge, but he's got some dimension to him in size, and he's a pretty good skater for such a gigantic guy. Was he 6'5" or 6"? He's a real tall guy. He's got some real range, eh?
Got some pedigree too. Like I know that it wasn't a name that Oilers fans were excited about even up to a year ago, but he was drafted 3rd round out of the OHL, and he struggled when he went back to Finland. Supposedly, I think you and Bruce watched him a little bit, but I think he might be one of those guys like Broberg that, because they're so fast and they get to places so quickly, they might be better on the smaller ice. Obviously he did enough in the OHL on the smaller ice to get drafted in the 3rd round. And now that he's back in North America, he's put himself back in the conversation.
Right. And the other possibility, of course, is that even if Kukuk is out, for number 6 defenseman in the short term is Chris Russell.
If he's healthy.
The assumption being that he's healthy, and us not knowing that. All we know is the last time we saw him, he took yet another one for the team, blocking a shot and going off in pain and near the end of the game in St. Louis. And then he didn't play in either the 2 Winnipeg games, and he's not on IR, so he may be day-to-day, or it may just be that he's ready to go at next opportunity, in which case he draws in, and whoever they call up would just be an extra sitting in the press box. So
if they even call anybody up, right away. So
yeah, generally they like to have an extra guy around just in case somebody gets sick on game day or something. You don't want to start a game with 5 defensemen because you didn't have a depth player in place. But that'll be a situation to play out. I did see the game in Bakersfield. Lost last night to San Jose Barracuda 4-3. They blew a 3-1 lead, and they didn't get any stops. And they had Konovalov had a tough night, beaten 3 times in a row to the glove side. Yeah. I did like Broberg. I thought he had a strong game. But I hear what Holland and Woodcroft are saying, and to me the plan is keep him down there through the Olympic break and then see where we are as we're going into the trade deadline. If he's still tearing him up, he'll be playing games the whole time. He won't be playing for Sweden in the Olympics. He's not quite at that place yet, right? It's not like he's from Slovakia or Germany. He's from Sweden, and they're known to have occasional good defensemen in Sweden. So, now, the other question that's bubbling under right now is apparently President Joe Biden today discussed the possibility of the United States boycotting the Beijing Winter Olympics. And if that happens, that changes the whole equation in a major way, because may not be an Olympic break, and then they would shuffle the schedule to fill those gaps and move up the end of the regular season. So it would take that sort of automatic thing for, I think, Broberg and also Dylan Holloway, forward, who's hopefully coming back from injury in a month or so. And it just made sense. You just leave them down there. When the pros break away for the Olympics, you just leave those guys down there playing games. And when the pros come back from the Olympics and the teams reassemble, then you make decisions on them. So that's, to me, that's probably plan A for Philip Broberg.
Yeah, it sounds like there's definitely a chance later in the year. I really think it's a conscious decision by the organization to throw out a message of caution on the timing, because we're fans, we're Oilers fans. There's unreasonable expectations on timeline. It's years and years of don't rush your prospects, but why aren't we calling him up? He is 20 now, so
Yeah. Well, he's where Oscar Klefbom was in his draft plus 3 year, and Klefbom spent, I think, 60 games down there in Oklahoma City. And after the trade deadline, of course, then the Oilers were not a competitive team, and they were sellers at the deadline, and they had new holes on the roster, and they called Klefbom up for the last 17 games, I think it was, and he was impressive. And then even his 4th year, he spent a little bit of time in OKC right at the beginning of the season. And when he got called up, then he was here for good. And Broberg is on that same trajectory. But he's made big steps this year. And I think he's ahead of where Klefbom was in his first North American season. I mean, he's got 10 points already.
Yeah, and it's not
a power play.
He's definitely ahead of him, as far as the boxcars. But recall, I think, in Klefbom's AHL season, he was behind. There was Brad Hunt and a few other people that were up. But with that said, and I wasn't watching the Barons back then. Like, I watch all the Condors the last few years, or as much as I can. And so I can't speak to if Klefbom was dominating the way Broberg is, but he's the way you see Darnell Nurse in the AHL, that impact, all over the ice, playing every situation. That's Philip Broberg in the AHL right now. Maybe not as physical, but not a shrinking violet.
But a big, fast, physical specimen.
Oh yes.
Who's able to dominate with his athleticism, and that comparison Broberg to Nurse has been made before. And of course, they were very similar in the sense that one went 7th overall in the NHL and the other went 8th overall, like very high in the first round. And so there's some legit comparisons between those two, and their style of play does have some things in common. Broberg doesn't have anywhere near Nurse's sort of mean streak and aggressiveness, but many of the other aspects, there are similarities for sure. And of course, Nurse didn't spend any time to speak of in the AHL. He was up by the end of October of his rookie professional season and never went back. So. And
then we got the lineup to the first pairing when Klefbom got hurt, I believe, and he was paired with Sekera, and it did not go well. But let's not think about those days.
Right. Yes, indeed. All right. Well, let's think about now. 12 wins, 4 losses. And the Oilers are, I think it's fair to say, a flawed team, but they're also a gifted team. And they are gifted with things that other teams don't have. And for all that, we're sometimes looking down at the bottom of the roster and say, well, this needs to be better, that needs to be better. We've got things to be thankful for. And one of them is that overall, it's a very interesting team. There's always plenty to talk about. And I think we've probably talked about it for quite a long while tonight, or Ira. So maybe this is a good time for us to draw this podcast to a close. Before I'll do that, I'm going to say thanks to you very much for pinch hitting for us again tonight in such an able fashion. Thanks for your insights.
Great, appreciate it. Thank you.
And thanks to you, the audience, for listening. And in the meantime and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast. Bye now. Apparently Ed Whalen always said